How We Made It in Africa recently interviewed Jonas Alemu, who is the founder of food company Lovegrass Ethiopia. Jonas has had a remarkable life journey from growing up in rural Ethiopia to becoming an investment banker in London and ultimately returning to Ethiopia to start a business which has sold pasta made from the ancient Ethiopian grain teff to Italians. I'm going to play you a clip from the interview now, but for those who want to watch the full in-depth interview with Jonas, there is a link in the description below which will take you to the How We Made It in Africa website. I also encourage you to subscribe to How We Made It in Africa, which will give you access to hundreds of interviews with African entrepreneurs and investors. You will also help us to do our work. We are offering a special 15% discount to our YouTube viewers with voucher code YouTube15, and you can check out the description for more information on that. But let's listen to a clip from the interview with Jonas Alemu.
I grew up in Ethiopia, in rural Ethiopia for that, in a very, very small rural village. And there was only school until grade 8 in the town that I grew up, which isn't unusual in that part of the world. And when I finished grade 8, then, most of my friends probably end up, um, in family chores, farming, or whatever you do in rural Ethiopia. Um, but my parents, you know, they insisted on almost every one of my siblings getting their education. There was no mucking about. They were very, very strict. Especially my dad was incredibly strict. I don't know where it came from. So I ended up in a kind of another town, like around 12 kilometers away from where I grew up, and I was literally walking that 12 kilometers. And finally, after a year, my brother had a business in Addis Ababa, which is a capital city. So I ended up, going with him. So it was a meal. Funnily, it was a meal actually that his business was in Addis. So how things kind of go in circles. After so many years, I end up in cereal processing. So I ended up in Addis working for him during the evenings or all the spare time, and then studying and doing my high school. And when I finished my high school, I was a kind of quite reasonably okay student, so I managed to win a scholarship. That was communist Ethiopia during those times, and during communism. Obviously, this is way before Perestroika. I'm talking about '88. um, the communist countries used to give each other scholarship for kind of good students, and I one of the fortunate ones to end up in Bulgaria, Sofia University. There was 40 students selected, so that's how I ended up in Europe.
Okay, so then you went to into investment banking, mostly in London. But I believe while you were still employed at the bank, you started experimenting with TEF-based products in your kitchen. Can you talk a bit about those experiments and what products you came up with?
Yeah, yeah. Just to complete the kind of the journey from Bulgaria, from Sofia, that was then, kind of perestroika came, and, in Romania, what happened, Ceausescu during those days. And in Sofia, there was just vinegar in the shopping floor, I remember. And it was a really, really difficult time. Um, and then just I was really, really lucky. I ended up getting this scholarship by African Educational Trust, And I studied in university here in the UK. That's also how I ended up in the UK. But I did engineering. I did electrical and electronics engineering. Um, and once I finished that, I knew the money was in finance anyway, so I was quite poorly advised. I should have gone into finance in the first place. So I went through a kind of a detour. Uh, I just used to go to banks and stand by Thames River in London, and then just see this glittering big buildings where all the money was being made, and how am I going to make it there? And a friend of mine advised me to do this certification called Financial Risk Manager certification, and that's how I ended up in banking. Actually, I got a fully certified FRM certification. It's quite a difficult, a lot of mathematics involved. And then I ended up doing another one called PRM, Professional Risk Managers. Then I ended up in BNP Paribas. Anyways, fast forward almost what, 15, 18 years, JP Morgan, BNP Paribas, and then Credit Suisse. But to be honest with you, I mean, this has always been like a dream to be in banking, and things were really evolving, moving on. This was quite rewarding and financially, and it was. I should have been pretty content, but quite the contrary. I was miserable, especially towards the last couple of years. I just it's just butterflies in the chest. What am I doing here? What is the point of it all? What value have I added to Ethiopia and to the people I left behind? So it's a very difficult time. I don't really know why I was so unsettled. So I used to read and find out what can I do. Well, what will be my next calling. And then obviously there was this patent issued against. It's a theft patent. So there was some business people here in Europe who had the use of theft, and especially value added things other than the traditional Ethiopian injera, which is flat bread. And for me, I grew up farming teff, so it just doesn't make logical sense. How can a European business hold patent on a product like teff, which is traditionally Ethiopian, historically Ethiopian farmers did it for thousands of years, and it just didn't make logical sense. So the more I looked into it, I realized the reason why the Ethiopian government gave the go ahead, the agreement with these people, which is a profit sharing agreement, was because in Ethiopia we just didn't have the institutional capacity to utilize TEF to convert into anything else other than what we traditionally do, which, as I said, is this flat fermented bread, Ethiopian injera. And that's when I start digging. And then I went, okay, so what can I do? I mean, if these guys here can do it, can I do it? What other thing can we do other than flatbread? And we were doing all sorts of funny, interesting things with it, especially with boys around. They were still quite young than my children. They were trying to make pasta out of it, and it comes out dry and breaks apart. we we did all sorts of, we put oil in it and etc. This is in our own kitchen. And then of course I evolved it more into industrial use, and we took it to a lab, and it's got, you need to test what's called amylose test, kind of the content, the starch content and starch structure. And it turned out to be actually an excellent ingredient, very versatile ingredient for a gluten-free product, and highly nutritious as well. So that's where it comes. That's it. This is my calling. And then from then on, it was virtually impossible to work. My heart was just completely somewhere else. It was really a very emotional time. That's why I think, when I finally decided to go back to Ethiopia, and that was it. It was such a relief. It's a new chapter. This is it now. Now I have always dreamed of doing something there in Ethiopia. So this is it. If I can make it a success, this is it's going to be. So yeah, that's how we started.